Hello, I hope everyone's doing well. I wrestled um, this past week with a lesson that God's given me based on the things that's going. Um, and in that, I kind of picked up what He had given me a couple of weeks back to to work on as well. So He blessed me with two. And the reason why it's not that I'm not listening to what He's giving. I love it, but as you know, in society today, people get easily offended when talking. So, disclaimer, just want to make everybody aware that statements that are made um, during this lesson are from me and they are my own, with the exception of the scriptures. Um, and I am in no way trying to be insensitive or minimizing on how emotional, the intensity of others, and what they're dealing with. But rather, I hope to be able to stimulate a fruitful and thought provoking conversation um, that will take us beyond impulsive reactions. We as Christians must see the division that is occurring in our society and world for what it is, acknowledging the source of all division, all chaos is from Satan. So, what I would like to do is kind of correlate everything together. So let's kind of talk about Noah. Now, in Noah, he was kind of commanded from God to build an ark, a boat. And we talk about how God built it, have faith. But let's study just real quick why. Why did God want to take and destroy the world during that time period? And so when I studied, I looked. So some theories are the corruption of the race. Basically, the sons of God came down and they started knowing or interacting or marrying, if you will, daughters of men, which is one of the proposed reasons of the flood. So you have the corruption of the race. Also, because of that, the offspring, you got basically um, the sons of gods who were ancient rulers who, as kings on earth, they wanted people to worship them um, versus taking and worshiping God. So that's another factor of why God chose to do a do-over, start all over. And looking at Noah, he saw the faith. And matter of fact, it speaks in Hebrews 11:7. By faith, Noah, being warned by God about things not yet seen, in reverence, prepared an ark for the salvation of his household, by which he condemned the world, and became an heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. So, looking around, God just said, enough is enough. All right. Well, because of the time period, some people say that God looked at it and just the increased corruption and wickedness that was going on at that time. God put out just a simple commandment: follow me, obey me. And people decided to do their own thing and pushed God further and further away from their life, from their community, from their society, and from everyday activity. Which that increased wickedness, corruption, brought extreme violence. So everything just mentioned has been proposed on why the flood had to occur. Let's start all over. But that carries us to the scripture this morning that I want to focus on. And that is in Genesis 11. Everybody knows it, Tower of Babel. So in verse 1 of chapter 11, now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Now I want to stop there for a moment and let's talk about that. So I'm sure there was all over the world, there was different languages, dialects before the flood. But because it was Noah and Noah's household, they spoke one language. So it's easy to see right here that once the flood waters subsided and the descendants of Noah, um, they all spoke the same language. And the commandment of God at the time was what? Go forth throughout the whole world and multiply and live righteous and do that. Verse 3, they continue on. They said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Now, keep in mind why God came to the decision to destroy the world. They were given a commandment. Go out. And as my understanding of reading, okay, one side of the family went this way, one side of the family went that way, another family went that way. But here, and so I'm thinking it's the family of Ham. Anyway, this group decided to stop right here. They found the plain of Shinar and settled there. And they chose to take and start building living quarters and a tower there that reaches to heaven. Now, we all know, just real quick, that, at first, when I very first time read it, I was thinking they were trying to take and get to heaven. When in reality, all they wanted to do is symbolism. They wanted a tower that is very tall so that when people come from afar, that's what they saw. And they did that so they can make a name for themselves. So they could take and show their importance so they don't have to do what God commanded. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Okay. Verse 5, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people, speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible to them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. Now that's very important. I love this. So already Trinity right here is being given. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So it was purposeful. He did not condemn them, okay, because he already did that through the flood. What he chose to do is just go ahead and just give, one German, one French, native, Indian, whatever. Just gave them different speech and tongue, and they would not be able to come together. But also look at the verse before. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they began to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. They were in agreement, okay? They were coming together, they were communicating, and they were doing this and that in accord. It's not anything they thought of they could do, but they were moving down paths that had no fruit, no glory, no significance to God. They were just taking care of themselves, selfishly. In verse 8, so the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Very simple. I mean, you're talking about 9 verses. So one of the things that I want to share with you is a correlation to today. The glory of God. I believe, the tactics, the thought of God, when given to corruption, given to evil, given to Satan, they're going to mimic. They're going to do what works, but not for glory, not for good. We are seeing, in essence, the reverse of the Tower of Babel today. Been going on for years. They are people that are dividing us. Communities used to be so much more tight-knit in the past than they are today. People not only respected themselves and their family, but they respected their neighbors, their communities, to some point each other. Not all the time and not all communities. But when you add God into it, yes, they really did look at one another with respect and admiration. So to make my point, I want to take and do this. Everyone has heard by now and knows the name of George Floyd, who died May 25th, 2020. You know, in that moment, at the beginning, everyone stood in solidarity at the disgusting events that surrounded his murder. Not one person has justified or excused the actions of the police. But think for a moment, why do you know that name? How did it become a part before the riots, before the protests? How did you come to know it? Well, the same reason why, from the same entity that you probably not heard of, Jaden Hayden. Now, I know a sister posted this, but I had seen it elsewhere, but I did a little research. So Jaden Hayden, and the incident that occurred in May as well. Now, Mr. Hayden is a 20-year-old who happened to test positive at a hospital for COVID, and he was placed in a nursing home to recover. And while there, he recorded himself beating a 75-year-old veteran who had dementia. Now, Jaden is a black male, and the veteran is a white male. But you've not seen the national news on that. Not many people know about Antonio Santiago and DeMarcus Elkins or Dominique Lang. Back on March 21st, 2013, a mother was walking her 13-month-old son in a stroller down the sidewalk. Two teens approached to rob the mother of her money by pointing a gun at her. Because the mother did not have any money to give, she was shot in the leg and the toddler was shot in the head. But there was not a huge outcry then. And again, I'm not going to talk about specific race in any more of these. There's a point. You know, looking at it, and this is the last one, has anybody here heard about Tony Timpa? Does it ring a bell? Well, August 10th, 2016, Tony called 911 because he was going through a schizophrenia episode and he was out of his medicine. So he called 911 for help. Police did arrive. But eerily, the same outcome for George Floyd happened to Tony. But yet again, where was the outcry? See, what we have here is the Tower of Babel, where, it's a poor choice of words, but you've got entities who's choosing winners and losers. But the truth is, because of this, we all lose. So you have a situation where if you're a white male killed by a cop, or a white person who is a victim of a minority, media does not report that. But if you are a minority, specifically African American, the media picks up on that. But this doesn't just happen in race. Think about it. All the good that I know just in the local church that churches do. It doesn't even get, no, there's no front page. There's no on TV reporting. But if something happens that deals with a Christian, they're zealots, they are racist, um, it's purposeful. There's an intention going in our world today where they're not changing our language. They're not giving us a new speech. But what they have done is give permission to certain people that it's okay to say one thing, certain people it's not okay to say another. Okay? We have brothers and sisters that are not yet been shown or been given direction, who are being fooled and manipulated by the devil. The devil has taken what God did in Babel, and they're doing today. They're manipulating us. People are angry. And I'm not going to say they don't have a right to be. We don't have a right. We have a right to be. But who do you place the anger on? I am not going to blame it on a subgroup, another set of people, when in reality somebody is Pinocchioing, marinating. Anyway, they're pulling the strings of you and I, and other people. They do want women to hate men, men to hate women, blacks and whites, rich, poor, old, young. They do not want us to come together, because what would happen? Remember what was said. And I think, and I do, I believe every scripture that we read is not just history, old news. They speak to us today. So God, when he came down, he said, if as one people is speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Can you imagine what our life would look like if we would just stop, hold people accountable that are manipulating this? We would be a society of so much goodness. God spoke to me late last night. Don't tell Sharon, I was about 1:30. 1:30, and he gave me a parable. And I just wrote it, and then I typed it out. I call it the division parable. And it goes like this. A man living across the way saw two families living side by side. That man wanted to own the property of each family because he favored it and wanted to multiply his stature. The man approached one and then the other to inquire about purchasing their land. Each family respectfully stated they are content and would not sell regardless of the amount that was offered. The man conveyed much appreciation to each family and thanked them for their honesty. The two families who lived side by side had grown to respect and love one another and were in harmony. The man devised a way to separate each family of their land. The man, being in good favor to each, got up early and killed some livestock of one family, making it look like the neighbor's dog did it. He aided that family in cleaning up the carnage. The next day, he did damage to one family's home facing the other family. He pretended to notice it first and then bring it to the family's attention and help repair the damages and inform that family that he will go over and speak with them. Little by little, the man instigated a strife between the two families until one family leader killed the other family leader. The man was able to buy both homesteads because one family had to sell their home because the family leader was dead and they could no longer afford it, and the other family had to sell their homestead because their family leader was incarcerated and they couldn't afford the upkeep. The man was able to get what he wanted at the expense of the two peace-loving families at a devalued price. So see, I don't have an agenda, but people do. Nothing against car salesmen at all. But car salesmen want to sell you a car. They don't care what financial responsibility you have. Their goal is to sell you a car. And we all agree to that. We know that's what happens. But when we go up, like politicians, they go to one group and say one thing, and go to another group and say totally opposite. It's manipulation. It's almost like they slap somebody in the side of the head and then look over and blame somebody else for doing it and say, I'll take care of it. I'll be honest with you. In my mind's eye, politicians and people of authority, if you will, who have an agenda, create all this. Now, I'm going to show a video. And because I don't want to minimize. In the mental health world, we call it risk and protective factors. Each one of us have it. We have factors that make us where we can handle things that come in contact and cope better than others. Like for example, if you're from a wealthy family, that's a protective factor. If you have a skill, that's a protective factor. If you're halfway decent looking, that's a protective factor. However, if you're not very bright, that's a risk factor. If you are addicted to drugs, that's a risk factor. Those are things in mental health. So the video, when you think on that and how children and the lifestyle they have to grow up into, think about how it takes and affects those individuals long term. I don't think it's a black or white issue. I don't think it's a rich and poor issue. I think somebody's protective factor could be the risk factor. I met very visually appealing people that were handsome or attractive, and that was their risk factor because they were never held accountable. And because of that, they suffered down the road. Because when you're attractive and as you get older, like me, you lose that pleasingness to other people, and you're going to be held more accountable for your actions and behaviors. But again, that's where we go. Scripture speaks about not judging a person on the outside, judge them on the inside, the character of who they are. And as Christians, what do we need to do when we see situations of families and children who have risk factors? Well, let's look at Isaiah 1:17. In Isaiah, verse 17, it says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow or the single mom." In James 2:14-17, we're told, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if not accompanied by actions, is dead." So the video I want to show you, think about yourself if you were asked those questions as a teenager. Let's say 15 years old. and you are asked those questions, when the coach is done, where would you be at? Praise God, though. By having a belief and a reverence to something, that is a protective factor. That gives us. But as you know, today people have just a huge gaping void, and they fill it for whatever they can. An emptiness of lostness, they try to belong. And they are drawn into corruption that furthers, degrades their future. So, I'm going to end here, but this morning when I was reviewing over the lesson, this came into my mind. We mustn't do things of the flesh, nor keep ourselves between God and His will. We should follow and do in the shadow of God's will and protective, loving support. Sometimes people want to just go out and say, look at me. Look at me. That's no way to be. I don't mind. I love people. I love getting out. But I don't like to take and redirect God's glory, God's love, God's grace unto me. Also remember this before I show the video. When you wake up in the morning and your eyes are fluttering open and you stretch, is the first thing you think about is your race, your gender, your age? Are you thinking early in the morning when you wake up how you can take and keep other people down? I don't know anybody who does that. But the truth is, when you walk out the door, when I walk out the door, society constantly tells me things that I don't think of myself. I am constantly reminded in society I am an old, white male. I ain't trying to be graphic here, but I'm more of a pasty guy. Old, it's all perspective. You ask somebody who's 100 if you're old or young, they're going to tell you you're young. You ask a 4-year-old, they're going to tell you you're old. So it's the perspective. What do you think of yourself? We have got to be brothers and keepers, brothers and sisters and keepers of how we want the world not only to see God through us, but also how we can help people see themselves. I do appreciate you. And again, this is the second filming because I went to the church in one of the classrooms and filmed it, and I had to echo. I'm not going to have time to take and review this, but I do appreciate you. I love you. And again, disclaimer, these are my words, and I hope I did not offend anybody. God bless you. Hope you enjoy the small video that I'm presenting. Take care and save a soul.
Hey, line up! Line up! Everybody line up! We're about to race! Everybody line up! Shoulder to shoulder! Take off your backpacks! Basketball, line up! We're about to race! Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability. You don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you didn't learn anything from this activity, you're a fool.